this is my August wrap up. I'm going to be reviewing all of the 12 books that I read this month, starting with the books I like the least and then working my way up to the books I like the most. So I always start with rants and then I end on raves. So I have a mixture of some books this month. I read a lot of literary fiction, like a lot of literary fiction. I had like one more transgressive fiction. I had one that leaned a little horror. Actually, two that leaned more horror. I had one extreme horror, and then I had a nonfiction. This is kind of how all of my months have been lately. I've been really heavily leaning into literary fiction this year specifically. Last year I was like really in my horror, extreme horror era, but I am, you know, starting to read more horror now that it's fall, so we'll see where the months take us. But I'm going to start with my 1-star read of the month, and that was Penance by Eliza Clark. And I'm actually really shocked by this because I loved Boy Parts with every fiber of my being. It's one of my favorite books of all time. It's one of the top books that I read so far this year. I genuinely love Boy Parts so much, so I was so excited to read this, and this was such a flop for me, and I'm so sad about it. But this is basically about it's like a fictionalized true crime book. It is a little bit mixed media, so we have the story of this girl that was literally burned alive by her 3 friends. So this book is basically like put together by this journalist. So we have, you know, his kind of POV, and he's interviewing some of the families, and then you start getting the 3 girls' POVs, and it's like broken down where like each chapter is about a different girl. So we have like girl A, and you learn her story and, you know, some of her dialogue and such, and then we go to girl B and we learn about her in school and her dialogue, etc. So it's broken up that way. This book was unfortunately so boring to me because there are these super long history chapters about the town and the people from the town, and it just ended up being too much. Just went overboard with the history lessons that were so boring. I could not follow along because my brain just would not allow me to. And then it went into these girls, it went into like their freaking dialogue in school, and you're reading, you know, this like 16-year-old girl's dialogue. It kept saying things like, oh my god, like TBH, like, oh my god, she's such a slut. Oh my god, it's the Halloween party and she's such a slut, like, oh my god, TBH. Oh my god, TBH is right, because TBH, I was about to fucking kill myself. This book just was dragging so much, and all I wanted was for it to be done. It was it was a buddy read on my Patreon Discord, which is linked down below. A lot of people really liked this, a lot of people really didn't like this, and this Discord channel blew up. I mean, people were just going off about this book for like weeks on end. Like, everyone had so many different feelings and emotions reading this book, like everywhere from hatred to obsession. I mean, this was just wild, but I cannot recommend this because I feel like if I recommended this to someone, I would want them to suffer, and that's just not fair. Like, if you're here watching my channel, I just don't think that you should be suffering. I mean, you probably already are suffering listening to me, so. I had one 2-star read, which was Watch Over Me by Nina LaCour. This was another Patreon Discord buddy read. For my friend Chris, his birthday was in August, and he got me this book and he wanted me to read it. And I read it for a video. I will leave that video linked. It was a video where he picked my books for the week. And if you saw that, I just didn't feel super connected to this book. It's about this girl who, it's like a YA book, and she just aged out of the foster care system, and she goes to stay at this like farmhouse and kind of work there. It's like a foster care home, but she also is like working there and teaching this 9-year-old boy, Lee. I didn't feel super connected to the story. There's this thing going on where there are like ghosts, and there's, you know, a lot of trauma, but I just don't feel like it dove deep enough into those things. I don't know. I did not really care. This book is mainly about her relationship with this 9-year-old boy, Lee, and I typically don't feel super connected to books about children. I don't feel super connected to the YA genre in general, unless it's something that I like literally read as a younger adult, and now looking back, it like has a special place in my heart, you know? But this one, I was kind of, I don't know, I just didn't feel like our main character was super developed. I didn't feel like anyone in this book was developed other than just a name. Like, names were being thrown out there. I couldn't connect who was who. I just felt very, reading this book. I couldn't wait for it to be over, honestly. A lot of people love this book. A lot of people say that it made them feel emotional. And listen, if that's you, I love that for you. This is just one that did not work for me. I need things to be a little more developed. I need a little more backstory, and I need that connection to the main character that I just did not have reading this one. Next was Ghost Music by On You. I gave this 3 stars, like a 2.5, 3 stars. It just felt very meh to me. This is another book that Chris picked out for me, but this is a lit fic magical realism book. So we're following this woman who, she's living with her husband and her mother-in-law, and we start learning about her dynamic with her husband. She feels very empty. She becomes a piano teacher, and you know, her entire life she's just like identified with like playing the piano and being this piano teacher, and now she's ready to have a child, and she's in her early 30s, and she's like, hey, it's time, I want to have a child. But her husband's kind of just like gaslighting her a little bit, and we're learning about this marriage that isn't so perfect, but also at the same time there are mushrooms mysteriously being delivered to the home. She's having dreams of mushrooms, so it is a little bit of this magical realism element to it, which I wasn't a huge fan of because it's very out there and ambiguous, and something that I just wasn't a fan of in this book. It wasn't the main point. And it didn't happen super often, but I did enjoy learning about her and kind of her trauma and like drama that was going on in her life, but I still wasn't super connected to this character, and it had a lot of piano talk that I just didn't care about, and unfortunately didn't fully work for me. It was okay, but nothing that I'm obsessed with. And I think I had 2 3.5s. The first one being another book that Chris picked out for me, and it's The Vegetarian by Han Kang. So this book is about a woman who decides to become a vegetarian because she said that she had a dream that forced her into becoming a vegetarian. And her husband is not happy about this. Her husband becomes very controlling. He's very upset about his image and how he's going to look because his wife is making these own decisions for herself. And, you know, how this is going to affect his image. And she's now kind of like starving herself. She's not eating anything. And so it's broken up into 3 parts. So part 1 is her husband's POV, which he's a horrible, awful man, but I enjoyed part 1. I enjoyed learning about the wife and kind of what's going on. It's like a very weird girl lit fic sort of moment. Part 2 is the brother-in-law's perspective and how he just kind of sees her as an object, and you know, his sexual fantasies, and he's also a piece of shit. Part 2 was horrible. Not only was it the pacing was off, but it also had some like abuse and sexual abuse and things like that, where it was just very icky to read about. Part 3 is about our main character's sister and her POV, which was by far the best one. It was, you know, very like emotional in part 3, and you got to learn this, we got to learn more about our female protagonist. So I appreciated that. This book was very weird. It was very, just bizarre in general. Like I said, I enjoyed part 1 and part 3. Part 2, not a fan. I do think it was interesting the way that it was written and how, you know, we only learn more about this main character from the one person that actually cares about her, and it's kind of written in a way where you don't know a ton about her or what's going on or why it's going on, because the people, like the POVs that you're reading from, don't give a shit about her. So I do like the way that it was written. Do I think it was a super impactful read? No, but it does have a lot of commentary about just like control and abuse and that sort of thing. So I would recommend it, just not obsessed with it. Then I read an extreme horror by my friend McKay. McKay Watson had a new book come out called Call Me Son. So this is extreme horror. There's some smut in there. We're following this guy who's in his 40s and he's on a dating app and he's on Grindr, okay? And he's looking for like a younger man to sleep with behind his wife's back. So he's cheating on his wife. He also has two teenagers, a boy and a girl. And, you know, he comes across this young guy. I mean, let's call him a boy because he's a teenager, okay? And they strike up a relationship on this app and things go downhill from there. It does have like a snuff film web game element to it. It did kind of give me, like, For the Sake of 2 by Judith Sonnet vibes, if you've read that book. It does have some scenes that are very similar to the movie Knock Knock. If you've seen that movie, I have, and I really like that movie. So I did like pick out these things that I really enjoyed. I'm not like the biggest smut person, so there were some chapters that were like really heavy smut talk, and I was just like when they're texting each other on the app, I was like, this is like, gag me, please. So I wasn't a huge fan of that. I do think if you're just looking for a disgusting, depraved, sick book, look no further. It was definitely gross, gory, creative in that aspect. I think McKay is really great at writing just disgusting, gory, nasty, depraved things. I will say I wish this had more character development though. Even though McKay is one of my best friends, you know, I have to be honest, I do wish that there was more reasoning behind what this character was doing and why he was doing these things. I almost felt like this character was acting a little out of character in order for the plot to move along. Like, I almost felt like there needed to be some more character development and some psychological component. Like, we did get a little bit, and I appreciate that, but I wish it was built upon, because I want to get into these horrible main characters' heads and like really figure out like where the hell they're coming from to justify the actions that they're doing. So that was where this book was lacking for me, if I'm being honest, and I am in my lit fic era, so that makes sense. But yeah, if you're looking for just like disgusting, depraved, extreme horror, that's what you're gonna get here. I forgot, I had a third 3.5, and it was I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. This was my book club pick over on Patreon. So I actually just got done with the live show literally 20 minutes ago, and then I sat down to film this video. So this book is about 39 women locked in a cage. The 40th woman is a teenager, and that's who we're getting the perspective of. And basically these 40 women are locked in this cage, and there are men who are guarding the cage up above them. So we're getting to know the story from our narrator, the teenage girl, and how she's the only one that was basically raised down there from a baby, and she doesn't know anything at all other than what these 39 women taught her or tell her about or whatever. And they all had lives before being locked down there, and so they were all captured and teaching her what they knew before being captured. So that's what this book is about. It's very ambiguous. It's like a dystopian sort of post-apocalyptic almost type book. It's kind of intellectual in a way where I said it is very ambiguous to the point where like you don't get answers about pretty much anything going on, and it's like everything is pointless, everything is meaningless, almost, you know, very nihilistic. And I do think a lot of people say that it's bleak and depressing. I do think it is a little bit hopeful the way that it was written and the way that our main character thinks. But overall, I am someone that does not enjoy over-analyzing literature, so I'm so happy that my live show discussions on Patreon, I like invite people, like if you want to come on camera with me, I just like send you the link, and I love doing that because then we can hear other perspectives. Most people in my book club gave this 4 or 5 stars. I think myself and one other person gave it like a 3-star, and we all just kind of bounced ideas off of each other. I didn't have a ton because I am not someone that overanalyzes, but I did really enjoy hearing other people's perspectives and theories about this book. And I do see the hype. I do see why so many people love this book. I am just not someone that loves a shit ton of unanswered questions. I like some of them, but I almost just wish that this did a little bit more. The entire middle of this book felt like it was really dragging for me. So yeah, if you join my Patreon at all in the future, there is a link on there where you can watch the live show discussion of this if you have read this book or want to read it in the future. But yeah, I liked it, just not obsessed like the entire world is. Oh man, my throat is sore. Next, moving into 4-star reads. The first one is The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin. So this was a read for Elizabeth from Reading Riley, her book club, the Midnight Society book club. I was on her live show this month and we read this together, and I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. So if you don't know what The Stepford Wives is about, it's about this woman and her husband and children. They moved to this town, Stepford, where she notices that all the women are acting super strange. All of a sudden, they're obsessed with staying at home. They're obsessed with cleaning, with cooking, with making everything perfect. Like, everyone looks perfect. There's this men's society where all the men hang out, and she's like, wait, why isn't there a women's society? Why aren't women invited? Why can't we do like a co-ed thing? And things go downhill from there. I don't know if I can say much else without spoiling this book. If you know, you know. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I think it had a lot to say about feminism and the patriarchy, and you know how this female character was really trying to like fight for what she believed in, and I appreciated that. But it was just scary to think that this was written in the 70s, and like I don't know how much is actually different today. Like in today's society, this was pretty scary to read about. Again, it was more so predictable to me because I don't think it did anything crazy that I wasn't expecting. So that's why I gave it 4 stars. But I do think, you know, there is this ambiguous aspect to it that does leave a little bit to the imagination. We did have some unanswered questions on the live show. So again, if you want to watch that back, I'll leave the link for that one down below as well. But that one is here for free on YouTube. But yeah, very interesting read. Crazy to think this was written by a man in the 70s, but I really enjoyed this one. My next 4-star was White by Bret Easton Ellis. My obsession, my hyperfixation, the man I'm traveling the world with. This is a nonfiction book. So this is kind of an essay collection from Bret and just like his thoughts on society and social media and commentary on how everyone is a fucking moron nowadays. I don't know. Everyone is offended by everything. Lots of commentary on like freedom of speech and groupthink and how everyone thinks that their opinion matters and how like their opinion is fact and if you disagree with them, you're wrong, and a whole gang of people are gonna, you know, gang up on you with their freaking pitchforks. And I just really liked his commentary on that, and how, you know, people get so bent out of shape over like stupid things that are said online, sarcastic jokes that are said online, you know, who you fucking voted for. Like, he was just like, why does any of this matter? Like, why are people so narcissistic nowadays that they think their opinion matters this much? There was so much in this book that was so spot on for me. I was literally going through and like copying entire paragraphs that I agreed with. There is a lot that I agreed with in this book. I know a lot of people don't agree with this book, and that's fine, because listen, I don't care about other people's opinions. We all have different opinions, and so that's fine. But the people that are offended by this book are exactly the people that he's making fun of. But yeah, there is a lot about politics. I do think the political aspect of this book drug on a little bit too much, and he does defend Kanye West. So I have some thoughts about that, especially being Pete Davidson's wife. I don't think I could ever defend Kanye West about literally anything, but there was a lot that I agreed on, and he does give some like backstory about American Psycho and some different books that he wrote. So I did end up really enjoying this, and I gave this 4 stars. Then I had an arc for The Night Guest. This is a translated book from Iceland. This comes out September 3rd, so by the time you're watching this, this will already be out. But this is a horror book about a woman who has chronic fatigue, and she's running to doctors all the time because she's exhausted, and it really has commentary about like medical gaslighting and how, you know, women are treated when they go to the doctor, and how if you have a chronic illness or chronic fatigue, they give you the runaround. It's like, you know, no one gives a shit. It's so hard to find answers. And I really loved that aspect of this book and that exploration. And she notices in the middle of the night, like her step count is going up really high. So now she thinks that she's sleepwalking. So it does have this like weird element to it where you're like, what the hell is going on? But like me being someone who is chronically ill, reading this book, I felt very seen, and I was just, it just felt very spot on for me as far as like how I feel dealing with my chronic fatigue and chronic pain, etc., and not being understood. So I really loved it. And then just adding in this like weird girl element to it, I really enjoyed this one. It was super quick, super fast paced. The only problem that I had was with the ending. The ending just felt like, oh, why did you end it that way? I don't know. The ending just almost felt like, you know when an author probably doesn't know how to end a book? That's what this felt like to me. I don't know. It did not land. Overall, I would highly recommend this for just like a quick, easy read. Then I had one book that was kind of, I didn't know how to rate it. I think I'm gonna go with like a 4.5, but I can't talk about it because it is a beta read that I did for a friend. I was so blown away by this. I don't want to talk about it because nothing was released or like spoken about yet, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. But I absolutely loved it, and like his writing was fucking fantastic, and I cried multiple times reading this friggin' novella. So if that gets announced, like I can't wait to actually fully talk about it on my channel because I genuinely loved it and believe in it so much. It was so freaking good. Then we're just gonna go ahead and get started with my 2 5-star reads of the month. The first one being The Rules of Attraction by Bret Easton Ellis. I love Bret so much. So this one we're following these 3 people in college. So we have 2 men and a woman. So basically there's like a love triangle going on. So like the one guy has a crush on the other guy, but he has a crush on the girl, but then the girl has a crush on her like boyfriend that left her and is traveling or whatever. And so everyone is in love with someone else, and it's just, you know, exploring them in college and how they all have feelings for someone else. They're all looking for love in the wrong places. It's another kind of satirical, funny, like some parts were just hilarious to me. over the top. You know, they have no plans for the future, kind of, you know, another nihilistic view on the world sort of book. At the same time, the one character is getting notes in his box or whatever from a secret admirer. So he's trying to figure out who is writing him these notes, and he thinks it's the girl in the book. So now he has a crush on her, and she's like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm not writing you any notes. So it's just, everyone has mixed signals. Everything is mixed up. I just really love the way that Bret writes kind of all vibes, very minimal plot. You know, it's all just his characters and character development. And I love the way that he writes. I think it's so unique and brilliant in a way. I know a lot of people don't like that, and I know a lot of people don't like his writing, but it just really clicks for me. I was so invested in this book. I needed to know where this was gonna go. I loved everything about it. I loved the ending. I just genuinely loved this book so much, and I love how he writes just like shitty, unlikable characters. I love unlikable characters. You guys know this. So this was just the recipe for perfection to me. I don't know. I cannot say enough good things about Bret Easton Ellis. I just love the way that he writes, and it's just so good. It's just so good. And I love satire too. Like, I've gotten to the point where I am just a satire queen. Also, I watched the movie for this one. Wasn't as good as the book, but like, not bad. I mean, if you watch the movie without reading the book, you would probably hate it. But being that I read the book, it made sense. There was like a shit ton left out of the movie though, so it wasn't verbatim. Like the movie American Psycho is literally the book. It was a little bit different. The book is way better, obviously, but I'd still recommend it. And then my last book and my last 5-star was The Collected Regrets of Clover by Mickey Brommer. This was another book that Chris picked for me, and this was the winner. So we're following a death doula. So basically she accompanies people on their deathbed as they are about to pass away, and she comforts them. And you know, we're following her in her 30s. She's very isolated. She doesn't have any friends. She has like, her best friend is the elderly neighbor, you know? So we're following her POV on life and just, you know, her day-to-day life and perspective on death and dying and how she accepts it. And she has like a book of regrets where she writes down like all of her clients' regrets before they died, and she tries to like do those things as she's living. And I really love this book. It was very sad. It was a very emotional read. I cried probably 6 times. I was fully sobbing in my vlog if you've watched that. And this one just really hit close to home for me. I just think that there was so many beautiful quotes and beautiful things about the perspective of life and death and dying, and I loved the people that she met along the way, and it was hopeful in a way. It wasn't like super bleak and depressing, like rah. It was very hopeful and uplifting in a way, but also still being sad at the same time. I just loved everything about this book. It is a little bit cheesy at the end, but I almost feel like it had to be in order to have those hopeful undertones. Yeah, I love this book so much. This is one that I'm going to recommend time and time again, and I'm going to reread this in the future, and I want to go back and like highlight quotes, and I'm just obsessed with this book. I would recommend it. It kind of gives a similar vibe to like Tuesdays with Morrie, that sort of a thing. Like, I could widely recommend this to people without traumatizing anyone. That is this book. Highly recommend. So fucking good. So yeah, that is it. Those were the 12 books that I read in the month of August. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite book was. I will see you in my next video. Bye.